place of magic that exists very personally for us here at R24. Gordy and I grew up obsessing over the culture of the samurai. We're talking watching Akira Kurosawa films and pining for the day that we got to devote much needed time in the far eastern lands of Japan. But until that day had arrived, we had to settle for digital-based travels. One of the earliest gaming entries that really sparked our obsession with Japan, most notably the feudal era, was Samurai Showdown. When that first launched on home consoles in 1993, it was just incredible. In the heat of the huge hits of Street Fighter and like Mortal Kombat, Samurai Showdown was distinct in one thing: fantastical tellings of ancient Japanese warriors. This sparked a fire very hot until it caught full blaze a few years later with a game called Bushido Blade. Bushido Blade released in 1997 and graced our PlayStations with the finesse and deep cut of a razor-sharp katana. This game was unlike anything we had ever experienced up to that point. We're talking free roam maps, the subtle sounds of bamboo thicket as Player 1 and Player 2's blades clashed, the threat of being killed in one hit, but more importantly, the mystique of the time period and culture. It drew us in completely. Then, the following year, the game Tenchu Stealth Assassins graced our consoles. Now, as younger kids, we were always fascinated by ninjas, but this game really hammered it home. Stalking the shadows, taking our targets and drinking in the Japanese night in pixelated form. From then on, our interests would forever be rooted in the East, past and present. The problem is, while Japan and its histories were forefront and center in the 90s, there isn't much in the current day and age in gaming taking place in our favorite country. For years, of course, we have been pleading with Ubisoft to make an Assassin's Creed set in feudal Japan. After all, the very idea of Assassin's Creed Assassins was rooted in Japanese history. But no, of course, the developers at Ubisoft have said time and time again that Japan as a setting is too overcrowded. But, the question has to be, how? Where? Sure, there were a handful of titles in the 90s through the 2000s that the settings were indeed in Japan, and we've named a few of those. Of course, other amazing titles that came out were games like Onimusha, Total War Shogun, and of course now in more recent times we've got games like Nioh and Sekiro. But that's a far cry from oversaturation in our opinions. Now, in the darkness came a light in E3 2018 with the full reveal of Ghost of Tsushima, which honestly probably the most absolute hype game that's coming out for us. Then, of course, just recently with E3 2019, there was Ghostwire Tokyo, which looks to take place in modern Japan with more supernatural takes. These are beacons of excitement in what we think is an otherwise unexplored setting in games. But why is this so important to us? There's just a certain mystique that you get from Japan that you cannot get from other settings in video games.
So, games with the setting of Japan are important to me for a few reasons. My dad went to Japan when I was a child a few times with the Navy. I was really young at that age where every discovery is pretty amazing. He served just south of Kamakura. There's a giant Daibatsu or Buddha statue there. And I remember when he came back, one of the first pictures was that I saw, and he brought Japanese writing, Japanese recorded TV, ninjas, and I was like, what's this? So being exposed to a new language, the kanji, the spoken language, instantly, I fell in love with it. So I dug into it a little bit, and games like Ninja Gaiden and stuff like that was out, and I just started to pay more attention to it, and I got into that kind of game and the history of Japan. And so I'm a big proponent of it, but there is definitely a lack of good Japanese games out there, which is super sad. And this is my opinion. One of the things that I want to see Japanese games for is their incredible rich heritage. The feudal era of Japan is so unique. They were so sectioned off from the world that they have things that you just can't get anywhere else. When you watch games in France and Paris and all that, that's the Western world. We're very familiar with it. Japan is so unique. The other factor that I'd like to see from it is the storytelling. So if you're going to do a Japanese game right, you're going to have it set, let's say, in feudal Japan, Sengoku era, or or Meiji Restoration towards the end there. In order to get it right, you have to get the culture, and then you're going to borrow from the storytelling. There are many tropes in Japanese storytelling that any anime fan is completely familiar with. So these story elements kind of are actually very old if you watch anime. A lot of them come from No, which is the oldest theater in the world, I believe, and Kabuki theater, which is a very unique form of theater. It's very, all the characters are very, jazzed up. They turn the knob up on the saturation, if you will. And the beautiful thing about it, is the storytelling. In a Kabuki play, in a scene or in the entire play, there can be an apex of emotion. And this is usually signified by a build-up, a reveal, and then someone plays the hyushigi, I believe. And it's a very distinct sound. It's just two pieces of wood being slapped together. It's a little bit higher pitch than bigger. And the character might stop in place. Everything freezes. If there's something in the air, it falls to the ground. And that moment signifies you should, have this emotion. And it's always like an explosion of emotion. And so all of these wonderful tropes that are so embedded in the Japanese setting and these story mechanics from the Japanese storytelling marry with the Japanese setting. And from what I've seen from Ghost of Tsushima and some of these other games that have recently come out, they do have those elements. They do have the sound. They do have the environment. So it is more than just ancient Japan telling ancient stories. It's more than a setting. It's a feeling, it's a place, it's a way of telling a story. The entire video game industry is suffering. This is an incredible setting with some incredible storytelling that is completely foreign from anything that we're usually exposed to, and I want to see more of it. I think that it will enrich the entire genre of video games. I really hope that Ghosts of Tsushima takes off, because this is a really rich, untapped area of culture and gaming.
So, as we look to the Eastern past to light a little bit of a brighter future for our Western games, we kind of like to take a minute and just look back at all the wonderful games that have graced this time period, and along with our memories, and kind of look forward to what awesome experiences we're hoping to have in gaming in Japanese settings in 2020 and beyond. Love to know what you guys think. Let us know. What are your favorite memories with Japanese games?